So India always has a bit of a mixed bag in terms of policy. I should admit that since Paris Climate Agreement, India is playing much, I would say, aggressive role, especially in the mitigation sector. On the other side, I think India can do much better on some of the issues which are eminently close to it kind of fortunes. For example, adaptation. India during this COP refused to sign two very important pledges.
Welcome to Policy Talks. Today we have Jayanta Basu. He's an eminent journalist who is working on the issues of environment and climate change for almost 2 decades, and he is at the moment part of the Telegraph as well as Down to Earth, and it's wonderful to have him over in our conversation. So thank you, Jayanta. Thank you so much for coming to our Policy Talks, and wonderful to have you here. So let me begin by asking you, you have been covering Conference of Party, the COP negotiations for all these years that I know. And how has India's role changed over the years? What have you seen? What is your observation?
First of all, it's such a pleasure and privilege to be here, Professor Anjal, Prakash, and we know each other for a long, long time. And when you talk about India's position or India's policy cutting across COPs, I always remember what former Environment Minister Jayanta once told me. He said, Ma Kali has 4 hands, Indian climate policy has 4 hands. We have US in one hand, China in another hand, and other G77 in other hand, and the basic countries other hand. So that kind of thing. So India always has a bit of a mixed bag in terms of policy. I should admit that since Paris Climate Agreement, India is playing much, I would say, aggressive role, especially in the mitigation sector. On the other side, I think India can do much better on some of the issues which are eminently close to it kind of fortunes. For example, adaptation. I think India has a bit of a dilemma in terms of its economic position. If you look at the German Watch report, which kind of chronicles the vulnerabilities, India is within number 1 to number 3 over the last 20 years. So definitely India needs support. But India at the same time is a very emerging economy. So that is a dichotomy, a dilemma India's position has always been. This is going to be important because in the next COP in the Baku, the mapping of loss and damage support will come up. So what position India will hold is very important.
Very interesting. But, if you've seen the climate negotiations, there's always been the global north versus global south. But never before in history that the global south as a voice has emerged. Do you see India's, galvanize those voices or leading those voices? What has been your observation?
I think quite consciously since last 1 year, India is trying to be more active in terms of providing leadership to global south. But again, when you would like to provide that, you need to look at the holistic scenario. India during this COP refused to sign 2 very important pledges. The first one is climate change and health. But I personally feel if you would like to be a leader in the global south, you may have your reservation, but you join the process and then tell what you want to happen.
Exactly.
Same came with the fossil fuel. India refused to sign that along with China. I said those sort of things need to be clarified at the India's end if really India would like to be a global south voice. Before going to the global south, India should also play an active role in the South Asian level. Unfortunately, geopolitics plays a very strong role out here. If you look at Africa, I was writing some op-ed and was looking at the data. 15 countries in Africa, they're fighting among themselves. But when they're going to the COP, there's the Africa group. But we do not have any South Asian group. So that's very important for India to sort it out at the South Asian level and try to have a leadership role there before going to the global south per se.
I always feel that a track 3, track 4 diplomacy at the South Asian level would help India achieving those soft leadership that we assumed, and and along with other countries taking together. How do you see the track, say 3 and 4, dialogues happening on climate action in the global south?
Yes, I think very important point you raised. I think before going to the track 1, we need this track 2, track 3 things. So I find that you need to pick up those issues where India and Pakistan have climate linked issue, where India and Bangladesh having climate linked issue, where India Sri Lanka has climate linked issue. Before, not by going a overall thing, you can low hanging issues which help both all the countries, then take on from there. I think that will help the geopolitics as well.
Let's move slightly further and see, coming to COP28, if I have to ask you, what are the three major outcomes that came out from COP28 in Dubai, and what are the implication of each outcomes has for India? What would that be?
Again, a bit of a mixed bag. I think COP28 kind of replicates a T20 match. It starts with a bang. The very first day, the loss and damage finance facility has been kind of created, or I think operationalized.
True.
And the fund came. And then the last day, you have this, I think, the historical decision of fossil fuel free 2050. But in between, we have a lot of noise, lot of negatives. For example, adaptation, I keep on saying this, adaptation didn't get the support it requires. So I think this is the situation. It's a mixed bag. I would say in the right direction, but not in right pace.
So at what I see that the India at the global level, the leadership is very strong, but that kind of a leadership should also translate into focusing on adaptation issues at the local level. Do you see a mismatch between that, or what is that your observation as a journalist?
I do see a lot of mismatch. To be very frank and fair, I do see a lot of mismatch. Having said that, we have a National Climate Action Plan long back. And if you look at the segment of it, apart from the solar part, other part are not being taken forward the way it should have been. And also, I think the federal structure on climate action is not being pushed. If India would like to achieve the net zero, so it has to be a net zero at Indian states. It has to be a net zero in Hyderabad. It has to be a net zero in Kolkata, in Mumbai, in Delhi, and everywhere. Chennai. India needs to buckle up at its end and need to have a country-wise domestic policy on climate change.
Yeah, very interesting point you made. Let me just come to a slightly different issue. You have seen when you started about 25 years before, climate journalists or environmental journalists had a small backdoor offices in the newsroom or otherwise. How has it evolved over a period of time? What has been your observation? And what do you suggest for the younger generation who wants to take this up as a profession? What would you suggest?
See, first of all, it has evolved tremendously. When I started journalism in about more than 2 decades back, climate change, nobody heard about it. And even environment used to get a page 5 or page 7 position. Now we are having page 1 stories. The trick is, and also I think the younger journalists can, I won't say that I vouch to them, but I think they can pick up points from there, to link environment and climate change with the bigger story. So that some of us consciously did. I would name myself, apart from myself, Jaydeep Gupta, I would say Vishwamahan from Times of India. So many of them, I think Richard leading from down to one. There are many of them who are working on that level. So very important that we need to link climate change. Now climate change is a global story. Climate change is not an environment story. It's a lifestyle story. So we need to take leverage of it. I think journalists now need to do more local stories, taking inputs from the global situation.
That's a good point to end with. This journalists must work on the local stories, but also link it with the global issues. It was a delight to have you, Jayanta, on this show, and I look forward to interacting with you further.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming.
And I'll just wind up saying that you did a brilliant job as a journalist. And I don't know what job I have done being on the other side of the table, but you did brilliantly. And thanks to everything. It's quite a freewheeling discussion, as we always have. And
thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.